he makes real parts for real cars. Oh, you want me to stop?
No.
Well, a few more examples. I mean, the thing is that for a while, we, together with lots of other people, were talking about making an electric car. We have sort of decided that is not the first step, that's the second step. The first step is to develop fabricating shops into a franchise. And at this point, a franchise is being built up in Stuttgart, and one is being built up in Göttingen, and there may be one in Wuppertal, and any number of German cities in which usually almost nothing happens are now moving in the direction of setting up fabricator franchise shops. Any number more than I mentioned. There are quite a few in Austria, also in Linz. But we have actually moved in a slightly different direction that is more ambitious and to my mind makes much more sense than making one more electric car that is almost as fast as a Porsche for the people who can afford a Porsche, which is, of course, of what's being done in California. What we are working on in Detroit, and there are some connections to the transition team of Obama, and we can certainly talk about what Obama is up to and what he is not up to, is the idea to introduce into the center of Detroit. And at the moment, I'm in charge of the economic development of the center of Detroit. I even have a title that goes with that, unlikely as that seems. But we are introducing a different concept of mobility. And lots of people use that term, but what it means is we make lots and lots of small, simple cars, very small, but cars that can take many, many different shapes, so that you can have a car that delivers bakery, you have a car that delivers sick people to the hospital, you can have a car that delivers flowers, you can have a car that has a barber shop in it, you can even have a car into which you can put a wheelchair. Now the idea is to have inside of the center of Detroit only these small cars, like your pedestrian zones, where you have no big cars. So inside the center of Detroit, we will only have these small little cars. And here's the most important point. The most important point is that when you get to the periphery, you don't switch into some big car that the by then bankrupt General Motors company has stopped producing, but you shift into a situation where your little cars make a train. They link up with each other. And if you want to go from Detroit to Lansing or to Chicago, you make a little train, and the train is powered from beneath, which solves the problem of how do you have batteries that are strong enough, which has been the bugaboo of electric cars for a long time. So you have enough battery power to run around inside Detroit, but if you want to get outside, then you hook up with other people, and you can read and write and talk to your children or be on the phone or whatever else you want to do, because the car is running on a track like a train, and you have the best of both worlds. You have a car inside Detroit, but then you have a train. I've said too much, so I stop.
Frithjof, you have said there's technology available, there are people in need, there are even some convincing examples. How do we get it into a bigger scale? Is there, my question of course would be, who is the change agent? Is it entrepreneurs? Is it government? Is it some what was called Bürgerinitiative in Germany, groups of people who have a social impetus and go for a cause? What is the moving agent? What is the change agent that gets it to run on a bigger scale?
Okay, I will take you up on what you're saying. The change agent is a bunch of entrepreneurs, so we can go out tonight and get drunk. The change agent are entrepreneurs in Africa, in Germany, etc., etc. The change agent are, among other things, people who set up enterprises with the fabricator, but also the people who set up enterprises with the ecobond, but also the people who use the ecobond to introduce vertical gardens, or to introduce compost toilets, or to introduce what I call the useful computer. And I'm throwing that out. We can talk about that more. But the change agent are entrepreneurs, so we are like brothers. With this, to provoke you a little, because you say the scale. Well, the scale, my picture of the world is that there are 20% of, and there's now a big exhibition that is called Design for the Other 90%. They go a little bit further. In other words, 10% of the world are spoiled and live in the oasis. And it's wrong to call them rich. I think it's better to call them oasis people and to suggest that they rub their members in very precious oils to make it sound mean. The oasis people and the desert people. And the desert people look like Anthony Quinn, if you have an idea of what Anthony Quinn looks like. He's anything but socially weak.
A little bit similar to you, by the way.
Well, you are flattering me to get out of a difficult conversation, so don't do that. No, the idea is that when you say scale, a quick answer is 80% of humanity enough? Because that is exactly what's happening, that 80% of humanity will move in that direction, is in the process of moving in that direction, has to move in that direction, sorry. Because if it, is that okay? I mean, if it doesn't, it will starve to death. And if it doesn't, no, and I'm serious, I hope you watch television and you found out what's happening to the Caribbean parts of the French Empire. Now, there has been revolution in Martinique, okay? And I hope you know that Belgium at this point is bankrupt. And maybe you realize that Ireland is also bankrupt. Bankrupt, no? And I'm not saying anything about Germany. Germany will be protected forever, at least as long as you stay asleep as you are at the moment. So the idea is an enormous part of mankind is waking up to the fact that the old system is coming to an end. And that's really what is the decisive thing about Obama. I mean, the question that people ask about Obama in the United States is that all he's going to do? Will he actually also stimulate the old economy just like Merkel does? Or will he really come to grips with the problem, which really started what you call the finance crisis? It isn't a finance crisis, it's a crisis of poverty. And what got the whole thing started, and even Der Spiegel admits that. Der Spiegel is a German magazine of not very high quality. And Der Spiegel admits that the whole thing was started by the fact that banks in America were in trouble because so many people couldn't pay their mortgages. That was the beginning. And then followed a whole line of bankruptcies and Citicorp bankruptcies, and all sorts of bankruptcies in many, many different companies, and of course all sorts of pressures on unions. And the result is that the question that people ask is, will Obama solve the problem of 40% in the United States at this point are poor? Is he going to solve that problem, or is he only going to try to stimulate the economy that actually has already died?